So I'm going to call this meeting to order. Today is Tuesday, December 17th, 2004. It is actually it's a little past 5, about 5:02, so we'll call it to order. Our first order of business is an executive session for legal and real estate that is warned from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. We'll need a motion for findings, please, and then a motion to enter executive session.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, for
Question.
which one? That is for findings? Two separate votes.
I'm
All
assuming
those,
that was
we're
findings.
voting on findings right now?
Second.
All those in favor of the motion as presented, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed?
Time out 1 second. Nicholas, are we recording?
Should be.
Oops.
The meeting was started, so it should be recording.
Yeah, we are recording.
Okay, good. See.
Okay,
Yeah. Thank you.
motion for executive session, and joining us will be, Mr. Manager?
I would ask you to invite TIF Administrator Carol Dawes, Robert Wells from DEW Construction, and Stephanie Clark from Whitenburg.
So moved.
Thank you. And a second. Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of the motion as presented, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, council will be in executive session in just a few seconds. And you should get an invite, Stephanie. You should see it popping up. Okay, there you go.
Did we all get stickers?
For some reason.
Thank you very much. Council, I'll need a motion to exit executive session, please.
So moved.
It's moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion is presented, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, council will stand in recess until 6 p.m.
Missed 2 minutes of the.
Yeah, we're,
Cheryl, just so you know, Councilor Dearman is also convinced, yes.
Oh, yeah, okay.
And I emailed the three of you,
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah.
thank you
so.
for that.
If we're still here at midnight, then I believe.
If we're still here at midnight, I have to leave.
Yeah, I'm gonna tap out before midnight, I'll be honest with you.
So you're giving it all for the last 2 weeks of the year? There's,
Yeah, go to Maui.
okay.
Absolutely.
And if there's a special meeting?
That's why they made Zoom. What are you talking about? So what if there's a special meeting? It's all good. Okay, council, we'll move on to item 3 on the agenda. This is adjustments to the agenda. We will be rescheduling under 8C. We'll be rescheduling the Vermont Coyotes presentation. They had a conflict this evening, so they will reschedule with the council. Mr. Manager, any other adjustments to the agenda?
That is the only one, Mr. Mayor.
Council, any proposed adjustments to the agenda?
Mr. Mayor, I believe we had one more adjustment, which was to add another resolution.
Which was?
Which was to add another resolution?
Oh, I was going to just break protocol and
All
let it
right,
be a
that works
surprise.
too.
But sure. We will be under 3B and then moving the existing 3B to 3C. So with that, council, we'll move to item 3A on the agenda. This is Resolution 2024-21 in recognition of Sue Minter. Would you like to do the honors? Usually we have Cheryl, but
Nicholas handed it to me. Nicholas handed it to me, so I'm going with it.
go for it.
All right, Barre City Resolution 2024-21, a resolution recognizing the service of Sue Minter on the occasion of her retirement from Capstone Community Action. Whereas Sue Minter has served as the executive director of Capstone Community Action for the past 6 years, navigating a global pandemic and multiple natural disasters in central Vermont. And whereas Sue's work has been universally lauded by the Capstone Community Action Board of Directors and supported by the entire staff at Capstone, whose work Sue would be sure to point out is key to the success and effectiveness of Capstone's programming. And whereas over the course of her tenure, Sue grew the annual operating budget by more than $10 million, bringing it to an annual budget of $27 million, and hiring about 30 more positions, bringing Capstone up to 200 total employees. And whereas Sue oversaw the launch of many programs that directly benefited the people of Barre City, including the Gopher Transportation Program, becoming a food hub through the pandemic-era Everyone Eats program, the food shelf located at Capstone, mobile food distribution programs and frozen meal deliveries, which have served, I did the math, more than 500,000 meals across Vermont, and the Fuel Your Neighbors campaign to keep our residents warm in the winter. And whereas Capstone Community Action played a vital role in helping with the cleanup and recovery from the floods of July 2023 and July of 2024, including countless hours of staff and volunteer time and capacity as case managers and general helping hands, spearheading the Main Street Recovery Fund, which shared nearly $1 million in direct grants to small businesses over the course of 2023 to 24, and establishment of the Capstone Flood Fund, which distributed over $150,000 in flood assistance to more than 130 flood survivors, as well as $50,000 to long-term recovery groups. And whereas Sue has served in multiple roles that have benefited not just the city of Barre, but the entire state of Vermont and the United States, including as a state representative, Secretary of Transportation, a member of President Barack Obama's task force on climate preparedness and resilience, Democratic nominee for governor, and finally the executive director of Capstone Community Action. Now therefore be it resolved that the Barre City Council wishes Sue Minter the very best in her retirement and good luck in whatever adventures she pursues next, and does hereby declare Saturday, December 21st, 2024 to be Sue Minter Appreciation Day, to express to Sue our most profound appreciation and sincere thank you for her years of dedicated service, and be it further resolved that a copy of this resolution be placed in the permanent records of the city of Barre, and that a copy be transmitted to Sue Minter.
I will take that as a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
There is a motion made and seconded to approve Resolution 2024-21. All those in favor of the motion as presented, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, motion is carried. Thank you very much.
I came with information. Because I do want to say that I'm only accepting this tremendous honor on behalf of the team at Capstone who really does the hard work. And I just wanted to say a few words about what we've been up to. And I do want to share this. Teddy, you mentioned the Everyone Eats program, and there's only a few reports left, but it is pretty impressive. Mr. Mayor, do I give it to you?
Absolutely.
Do I give it to Cheryl? So here you see our latest annual report, and there should be enough for everybody. And then this describes all the programs we do, because there's a lot that we do. And I really just wanted to say how incredibly meaningful it's been for me to be a part of your community for these past 6 years. The mayor knows I've had some history here. When I served in the legislature, one of my members of my committee was the former mayor, Harry Monty. Thank you. And he and I schemed a lot, but I was representing Waterbury and he was representing Barre. And there were these two projects that were like going to be 20 years out, and they've been waiting for 20 years. He and I pushed them forward, and guess what? At the last minute, Waterbury was supposed to go first. But then Senator Phil Scott said, Barry's going first. So that's the Barre Main Street. And I knew my place and was really happy to make sure that this city, which of course supports so many critical functions for our state, and I think anyone could have argued deserved to go first. But most importantly for me, I then was in the Agency of Transportation when the project came to be. And we had some good discussions at that time. And what I'm so proud of is, I think some of you know I'm a planner and I really believe in public engagement, and I really believe in infrastructure as an economic driver and a community builder. And your community made that actually come to fruition because we invested in the Big Dig. Do you remember the campaign? And you all did a lot to not just endure the building, the devastation of your main street. You actually built pride in that. And I always remember that. That was stellar. I believe you were mayor at that time. But coming back at this time and really getting to know your community and how much not only you focus on the economic drivers but the people. And of course, we have a very big front door at Capstone, and it's been growing. I'm really proud that we've been able to grow our programs and what we contribute to this community, and we actually serve 3 counties, Washington, Lamoille, and Orange. I'm not proud of the fact that we need to keep growing. And I do want to say it's been tough times for so many of your constituents, and you know this, I'm sure, better than I. But the folks who I see in my front door, more and more, our food shelf, and thank you so much for your generous support for our Fuel Your Neighbors campaign that I understand happened maybe at your last meeting. We have seen, and some of you work in food security, in the last 2 years, an astounding 110% increase in the number of people coming to our food shelf. And it's pretty hard to fathom. We now have 35 active volunteers. We no longer pay someone to help because we can't afford it. We're just putting everything we can. But also in heat, that people don't have enough to stay warm at winter. So what we do with that campaign that you invested in is we never say no. We try not to say no. Some people are eligible for federally funded heating support, but many are not. And they only get 1 assist. And when they come back cold, we're able, because of this support, we raised $350,000 in your community, in our community for this service. So I want to thank you because the need is great. But also, what a great community you have. I don't know if you know that we have a micro business development program. We've helped many of your constituents start their own businesses. The best way out of poverty is to start businesses. We've helped people establish relationships with banks and financial institutions that may never have understood those relationships. We've helped people get out of debt, establish credit, and build assets. These are your community members that we've helped people file their taxes. Some of you may know that, but we have filed last year 1,700 taxes. We have 30 volunteers, one staff person and 30 volunteers, 1,700 tax returns that brought into your community over $2 million into the pockets of folks who spend it locally. So we do see these as economic development. It's a different kind of development. But your community is such a wonderful, caring community. I think that you and we try to treat all our community members with dignity and respect. And we know that there's a lot of challenges ahead. And, we partner with Good Sam and Washington County Mental Health and all of the others, but most importantly, your team, especially your public safety team, in trying to ensure safety as we have more and more folks unhoused and cold. I just want to say that being here the day after the 2023, July 11th, 2023 flood was an extraordinary experience. Your people were battling back. They were well organized, they were courteous, and they were everywhere. And you did it again and again and again. And it's, we were able to support some of that, support the state up at the Odd for many weeks, and now we have a disaster recovery group still at it, helping Barre up. We brought NCCC teams. I don't know if you knew that. We rebuilt 8 different homes, like in the last 3 months. So we're still here with you, but I was so inspired and moved by all of you and the leadership you provide, and the businesses. I remember, Mr. Mayor, I think at a time you felt like throwing up your hands and giving up, and you looked around you, you told me, and you saw that nobody was giving up, and you weren't going to give up. Please don't give up. This is a beautiful place. You are making it more beautiful, and I'm just honored to have been a part of it. Thank you for honoring me. I can't believe I have a day named after me. I can't wait to read which day it is. I'm going to come and shop locally. But I really appreciate your service. It's such hard work what you do, and it's so important. So thank you for having time for me and for the care you give to your community and your support for Capstone.
Thank you.
I'm not really going anywhere far away. You'll probably see me around. I kind of imagine myself as an ongoing ambassador to Capstone and an ongoing chair of the board of Gopher. Gopher is its own nonprofit organization called Community Rides Vermont, and I want to make that succeed. And that's another story that we'll come back for.
We've got big plans for Gopher. We've been scheming on that.
We might need those. That
And
little
Sue,
extra
there's a
shoulder
great
room.
saying, don't be sad that it's over, be glad that it happened.
There you go.
And you and I have worked together for decades, across administrations, across the legislature, across so many great organizations. I know your passion for Waterbury might be surpassed by your passion for Barre. You've always been a supporter. You've always rooted for us. You've always helped us to succeed. So it's not over. Oh, and Sue Minter Appreciation Day, don't let it go to your head. You still have to abide the local traffic rule, I
thought I'd have a
I
special
know,
parking
everything, I
spot.
just want, everything, we'll give you hugs if you come into town on Sue Minter Appreciation Day. Everybody will be instructed, but cops won't look the other way. Sorry.
You get free parking.
Free parking. And you get anywhere on Main Street on Sue Minter Appreciation Day. Sue, I can't thank you enough. Thank you again.
Thank you all very much.
But wait, council, there's more. Council would like to introduce item 3B on the agenda. This is Resolution 2024-21 in recognition of Councilor Teddy Wasizak. Councilor Guston?
Yeah, I get to do this one. A resolution recognizing the service of Teddy Wasizak on the occasion of his election to the House of Representatives. Whereas Teddy Wasizak is a councillor from Ward 2, serving since 2019, and is the youngest councillor ever elected in Barre City. And whereas Teddy has represented his constituents faithfully and advocated for the needs of residents unable to advocate for themselves to the benefit of all city residents. And whereas Teddy has been a strong voice for outreach and public involvement and volunteered in flood relief efforts and facilitated ward-level community discussions about flood mitigation and is now resigning his seat to further serve the people of Barre City in the State House. And whereas Teddy volunteered to be an Aldrich Library trustee as additional evidence of his civic engagement and advocated for the importance of the library as a central source of literacy, learning, and public discourse. And whereas Teddy has been a leading voice on the Police Advisory Committee, advancing policy changes and collaborating with diverse community members to achieve positive results for the development of our police force, including strong advocacy for body-worn cameras. And whereas Teddy has repeatedly shown his concern for residents facing hunger, homelessness, and inadequate wages, and acted on those concerns by lobbying for changes in ordinances and the charter. And whereas Teddy's efforts have helped make Barre City a more just and equitable place for all residents, reflecting his dedicated work and advocacy. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Barre City Council honors Teddy Wasizak through this recognition of his work and does hereby declare Wednesday, December 18, 2024, to be Teddy Wasizak Appreciation Day, to express to Teddy our appreciation and sincere thank you for all that he has done. And be it further resolved that a copy of this resolution be placed in the permanent records of the City of Barre and that a copy be transmitted to Teddy Wasizak.
Is there a second to the presentation and motion?
Second.
Thank you very much. All those in favor of the motion as presented, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, thank you very much. 2024-22 is adopted. Well done. Quitter.
All the good ones, no one.
You still have to sign it.
Thank you.
And you have to sign your resolution, Counselor, in order to make it.
Thank you all.
Floor is yours. Unless you'd rather wait, it's up to you.
No, I'll go now. I wrote it down, because I always have to write things down. So thank you all very much. As I've reflected in the past few weeks of my service on the city council, I've realized that it's actually the longest job I've ever had. I've never had it's been 6 years, and I've never kept one job that continuously long because I get antsy and I like to move around. And it is without a doubt the hardest job, the job that has taught me the most about myself, about my neighbors and my community, the most about governing and actually getting things done, and the most about service and hard work. As was mentioned, I was 21 years old when I attended my first city council meeting, and I was 22 by the time I took my seat. And being the youngest person ever elected to this body, I hope has shown people that you don't have to be the most experienced person, you don't have to be the smartest person, you don't have to be, there's no secret to being an elected official. You just have to care about your neighbors and you have to care about your community. And that's what makes this job amazing. And many of you know my story, but my mom kicked me out of my house when I was 15 years old, and I've been on my own ever since. And that was followed by years of food insecurity, of housing insecurity, of severe mental health struggles, of economic hardships. And the reason I ran for office the first time, and the reason I've continued to run for office, is to help those other 15-year-old Teddys in Barre City and in Vermont that are falling through the cracks. I fundamentally believe that in a state and in a country and on a planet where we have so many resources and so much ability to help people, any child falling through the cracks is completely unacceptable. And every vote that I've taken, every issue that I've advocated for has been to help those kids who are falling through the cracks, because it doesn't have to be that way. And the good news about that is that kids fall through the cracks because we have systemic failures. And the good news is that we can fix those systemic failures and we can take action to make people's lives better. Over the past 6 years, we have made a lot of really good progress on some of these issues. We have body-worn cameras in our police department. We have a police advisory committee. We passed a policy for socially responsible investing, which helps us invest in green energy and progressive causes. We have hired, working with Peter Anthony, one of my first projects was getting a mental health counselor hired and embedded within our police department. And we've invested in multiple housing projects, including the Down Street Ward 5 building, the revolving loan fund, and as Amanda mentioned earlier, more civic engagement. You know, for better or for worse, more people show up to city council meetings now than they did 6 years ago, and that's something I'm very proud of. A couple of recommendations that you can choose to listen to or not as I'm on my way out the door. Upon resignation of a counselor, the seat is filled via a ward caucus, a good old-fashioned everyone gets up into a room and stands in their separate corners, and that's by charter. And I'm nervous about turnout in a dark January caucus at the odd. So keep an eye on that. Keep up the work on police accountability and racial and social justice. We have a very strong, very progressive police department here in Barre City. And I'm hiring of Chief Vale is one of the highlights as I look back over the past few years. And so I encourage you all to keep up that work. Keep investing in housing of all kinds. We're going to take action on that later this evening, but you know, it's time to throw spaghetti at a wall and see what sticks. And find a real solution to the DPW garage. I talked about this in 2019. It bothers me every day that that is not something that we were able to get done. So I hope that everyone sitting here is going to jump on the opportunity to actually fix the DPW garage problem. And don't be afraid to do the big things. Other than my job here at the City Council, my favorite job I've ever had was as the state director for Senator Elizabeth Warren's presidential campaign in 2020. And the mantra of that campaign was to dream big, to fight hard, and to win. And that's how you make real change. And so I've tried to do that for 6 years, and you can bet that I'm going to keep doing it in Montpelier. Thank you.
Teddy, I will miss you.
I'll miss you too, Tom.
Truly,
I really will.
because although you won't be far away, I mean, now that I'm mayor as a councilor, I didn't make a lot of appearances in the State House. There will be a lot more, so we'll see each other in the cafeteria. But no, what I'll miss about you is you and I have had some differences of opinion, but we both understand how to have those differences without letting it get personal. We can still run over to Gusto's, we probably will, and have a beer. You know, you took my ribbing when I would tease you about your T-shirts when I first arrived in the council, and I brought you the tie, but I planned it carefully. So what did I bring? I knew Teddy's not going to wear the tie. So I brought a New Orleans Saints tie to the council, and I gave him that New Orleans Saints tie. So here it is how many years ago was that? How many years later? It's awesome because it's become your lucky tie.
It is my lucky tie.
And now you have to wear the tie.
Yeah. I've never lost a vote while wearing that tie.
So, you know, Teddy, but you taught me something, because I will have to admit, when I first joined you on the council, I had some preconceived notions about how you might be to work with. And honest to God, you have been a pleasure. And when people ask me, what is the biggest surprise, you know, about being back on the council, being back as mayor, I tell them, Teddy Wasilak, he is a pleasure to work with. He has a pure soul. He has his convictions. I'm not going to budge him off of his convictions, and he's not going to budge me. But we're going to do it with respect, and the best man wins. So, Teddy, thank you again. Appreciate you. Anyone else, council? Oh, and Teddy Wazizak Appreciation Day. Yeah.
Yeah. It was nice of you to try.
Yeah, you're welcome. Anyone else? Okay, council, we will move on to item 3C on the agenda. This is visitors and communications. Is there anyone wishing to address the council regarding an item that isn't on the agenda? Okay.
Erica.
Oh, I'm sorry, Eric. I didn't see the hand.
That's
Please.
okay. So this Friday is, we're having a vigil for those we have lost that are homeless at the State House in Montpelier. And just for a brief moment, I'd like to read those that we have lost, the names that we have lost. It's a very short list. There's only 8 people, but those are 8 people too many. Kevin White, Brandy Cabana, Kelly Prime, Chris Corrigan, and in fact, we lost 4 people this past November. Lucas Menard, Tammy Menard, Louise Lane, and Gillian Hernandez. Those are 8 people we have lost, living in encampments and in hotels here in central Vermont. Please join us on the State House at 4:30 this Friday. Those are people that I was friends with, co-workers with, board members with, community members with. It's a deep loss. 8 people are too many. Please join us as we mourn the dead, but we still fight like hell for the living. Thank you.
Thank you, Erica. Anyone else under visitors and communications? Seeing and hearing no one, council will move on to item 4, which is the consent agenda. We'll be approving the minutes of the meeting of December 10th, 2024. Do you have any licenses and permits to execute? Clerk has no licenses or permits to execute. The manager, I don't believe there are any pending contracts. However, council, I just wanted to call to your attention, you did receive a copy of the due diligence, the Prospect Heights contract that should be in everyone's inbox that the manager executed this week. And lastly, we'll ratify the council's 12-10-24 allocation of $10,000 from the Brusa Trust to the Fuel Your Neighbor program. Motion, please.
Moved.
Thank you.
Second.
And seconded, moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion as presented, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, thank you. The motion carries. Council under 4A will be approving the city warrants for the week of 12/18/24. Motion, please.
So moved.
It is moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion as presented, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, boy, we're not very enthusiastic.
Aye.
Like, okay, thanks. And those opposed, and your abstention is noted. Okay, Miss City Clerk, do you have a report for us?
I do. A few things. We have been getting a lot of phone calls in regards to the tax bills. We are patiently and hopefully clarifying all their questions, and we will continue to do that as long as the calls keep coming in. The biggest concern is the payment amount that is reflected in the second quarter. It is not exactly what they think they paid, and it wasn't. It's just that they moved all of their payments into the first quarter to cover the additional education tax. So what appears to be their payment in the second quarter is less. But it all balances out once you pay your balance due in the second quarter. It all washes clean. Second, we don't have to pay those balances in the second quarter today. They are due actually in February with the third quarter payment. Thirdly, applications for the community service allocation applications are due December 31st. Annual entertainment licenses are also due December 31st. And coin drop requests will be considered beginning January 2nd. please reach out to us with any details or rules and regulations for those.
Thank you. Any questions, council? So basically, take the little amount, add it to the big amount, and pay that amount by
February
15th.
17th.
17th. Oh, you get 2
15th
extra
is on-
days this
yes,
year.
15th is on a
Okay.
Saturday.
And if you have a commercial property,
There
your
has
bill
been
didn't
no
change at
change.
all. We just sent you two.
Exactly.
Okay, awesome. Liquor and Cannabis Control Boards, I think we have one
Yes,
item
we
for
do.
consideration.
Berry Social Club, and Kat Allen is here to talk with us today.
Come on up. Welcome.
Hello.
Listen, and Kat, you only have to do this once. We do ask first-time applicants to just come before the council and introduce themselves, even though I think probably the majority of the council already knows you and has met you, but floor is yours.
Officially state it for the record, because I never do that. I'm Kat Allen. I live on Hilltop Avenue.
Thank you.
This is Nick. He's not used to it.
I'm Nick Allen. I also live on Hilltop Avenue.
Awesome. So listen, we'll give you time to shamelessly promote this venture, so indulge.
Yeah, so we are opening the Barre Social Club, which is at 105 North Main Street, Suite 102, which is where the bike shop used to be. For those who don't know, the bike shop moved voluntarily. They wanted to go to their new home on Summer Street. And they invited us to come and look at the space to see if we would take over their lease. We said, yes, and. So we took their space and the space behind it and have been renovating for about 4 months now. And we'll hopefully open doors in a few weeks. But we are a co-working space, event space, and a Vermont-focused retail shop. So the co-working space, or the co-working is a membership plan that gives people access to the space Monday through Saturday from open until close. We also have social memberships that give people access to the space from 4 until close, Monday through Friday, and then all-day access on Saturday. The retail shop is open to the public, and it features Vermont-based companies and Vermont makers, and things that we consider to be heritage-grade goods as kind of a callback to Barry's artisanal past. We're gonna have a bar.
I'm gonna say, and if it's a particularly hard day,
Yeah. So the events,
you'll also have full service, so.
yes, the event space can either be rented by the public, rented by our members, and we will also host events that are both members and publicly available. And we think people will be thirsty.
Fantastic. Council, any questions? If not, a motion to approve.
I guess I sort of have one. As a Founders Club member, do I have to abstain from this vote?
No,
All right.
you have no financial interest in the approval of their, you may have an interest, but
I
it's
do.
not a
It
financial
is not a
interest
financial interest,
in
no.
the approval of their license, so no, you do not.
All right, good.
Would you like to make the motion to approve?
I would like to make that
Okay, I
motion,
will
yes.
accept that. Is there a second? Motion is made and seconded. Council, is there any other questions or discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion as presented, please signify by saying aye. Aye. And those opposed, thank you very much. We'll see you there.
Thank you.
Have a great evening. And you're welcome to stay, but we understand if you don't. It's all good. Okay, council, we'll move on to the city manager's report.
Thank you, Mayor. Just 3 main updates for the council. One is the sewer relining on North Main Street got started today between Blackwell and 4th Street. This is going to be ongoing the whole week, and so we please ask people to use caution traveling through the area at night. When the liners are there, we do have contractors there working on the one segment that needed an old-fashioned repair, and I'll get to that in a second. We did ask people in the vicinity to limit use of water. The work is happening overnight, so it should limit water by default, but, you know, to the extent possible, if residents could, we put out a map of a general area. That'll just help the process go a little bit smoother. As I mentioned, there was daytime work happening this week to make some fixes to the sewer that we're not going to be able to take the lining. Unfortunately, while they were doing that today, part of the sewer collapsed. The good news is that the Public Works Department mobilized very, very quickly. They were able to resume flow through the main, and they may have already done so, but they were very imminently ready to set up bypass pumping. So do not expect any sort of widespread impact, hopefully no impact, because they were able to restore movement through the main. And so that may delay, I still don't have the impact of how that may delay the replacement of that particular segment. Our other contractor should be able to continue with the relining, but this may be delayed. We probably won't know until the morning. We still don't know exactly how much collapse. We're still getting into the ground to assess that. So bad news in that it collapsed, good news in that we were planning to replace it anyway. Better news that they were able to resume flow, so we don't really expect this to impact any people, hopefully no people, if any, it'll be a minimal impact. The water department has also been continuing the work on the hydrants. As I mentioned last week, residents have noticed that there are quite a few hydrants that are out of service. This was part of their work to assess all hydrants. As I mentioned, you may see a bagged hydrant, those don't all mean there's a wide range of deficiencies. It may be from a part to a full replacement. They're still considered out of service. And our fire department feels very, ready and able to fight any structure fires that they need to. They have, as I mentioned, they carry 1,000 gallons of water in their trucks, and they have a tanker task force prepared. So I think, and I didn't get the exact numbers because this crew was deployed to do the sewer work, but I believe it was 6 hydrants were replaced in the past week. But on the other hand, they're continuing evaluation, so 4 went down. So it's an offsetting. We're still working in the right direction, but it is ongoing, and they're getting hydrants back up as quick as they can, and they are making progress, even though you may not see it. The second update is very happy that our local hazard mitigation plan was approved by VEM. This is, as you may recall, the city hired Central Vermont Regional Planning Commission to assist with the development of the plan. This was a really lengthy and public process. It included a public meeting in March of '24. The Planning Commission weighed in at its meeting in July '24. The council had a couple of touches with the plan, and it was approved in August of '24. So this is a really long overdue plan. Janet really got this across the finish line, and what it does, it cements our ability to get state share for FEMA. So it was really important that we got this done, and Janet saw this through. And then finally, at this time of year, we always have an opportunity to celebrate employees who reached important milestones in their service to the city, and this year was no different. We celebrate Nick Benson, Lieutenant in the Fire Department, for 10 years of service. Jake Drown, who's our Superintendent of Water and Wastewater Treatment, also with 10 years of service to the city. Captain Matt Seaton in the Fire Department, and Captain Mike Charbonneau in the Fire Department, 20 years of service each. Rob Lowe in our dispatch center has served the city for 25 years. And Rob, you may have seen him in the game against the Martins. So he's given back to the city in many ways. And Don Bullard, you may have read this earlier this year in the Talk of the Town. Donnie Bullard at the cemeteries, 40 years of service. I'm trying to remember, I think it was 70 people per year he's estimated to bury, which is about 2,800 of our closest friends and relatives and family members and community members that Donnie has been with there at the end. And so, just a really nice opportunity to, a lot of people put a lot of time with the city, and these are the folks who reached some special milestones this year. So that's it.
And we appreciate them all.
And if I may, I forgot, I had some show and tell that I should have mentioned for the sewer relining. And just to give people an idea, this is the.
Go stand over there.
So, this is how the sleeve sort of goes into the sewer that they're putting in to reline it. And so this is the material you can see. I don't know exactly what material it is, but you can see it's very flexible and bendable, and it gets inserted in the pipes. And then this is how it cures. So this is what our new sewer along North Main will look like after it's all done. So it's a really phenomenal process. As you may have read in the Times Argus, this project, we estimate doing it the old-fashioned way would have cost a couple $1 million, and we were able to do it this way, give it decades of useful life for $355,000. So, and I think today's event obviously shows how vulnerable that section was, that it gave way pretty quickly while it was being repaired. So just a little show and tell so you can sort of visualize what's going underground. So, thank you.
Thank you. Any questions, folks? No? Okay, then we will move along to new business under item 8A. We have a first reading warrant, and we're a little behind. Warrant for 620, this is ordinance 2024-03, winter parking ban. The manager is just proposing a couple of tweaks to it. Mr. Manager?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. The markup was included, there's a memo, and the markup of section 17-26 of city ordinance was included in the packet. So the real substantive change is, if you have the packet, it's on that first page of the markup, paragraph D, which if amended, would now read, between the 15th day of November of each year to the 1st day of April of the following year, no person shall between the hours of 11 p.m. and 6 a.m. park any vehicle or permit any vehicle to remain parked on any city street or city-owned parking lot unless such vehicle is parked in a designated overnight parking space with a valid permit. Just because we're in the section of ordinance, there's a little cleanup here and there just to make things sort of standard language. As you can see, there's, getting rid of some, making sure the same format is used in a section that shows actions that are not allowed. There's actually, the parking ban was actually contained in two sections. Paragraph J also contained the same basic rule, so we just deleted that one since it's duplicative. And yeah, so I think it's a pretty straightforward change. As I mentioned last week when I sort of previewed it, we're gonna, this is still a pilot that we're doing with the parking ban. It's going pretty well. We're pretty happy with it right now. We're not planning to tinker a lot this year unless we really need to. We certainly did not plan to codify the parking ban in ordinance this year until we really knew if it was working. However, we've operationally and from a communication standpoint, we believe the change to 11 p.m. is good and important regardless of whether we keep this pilot or go back to the old system. And that's because right now, with the parking ban starting at 1 a.m., our plow truck drivers don't get started until 2 a.m. really. They give time for the ban to take effect. And so by starting it at 11, it gives them a little bit of head start on the storms. And there's still a lot of people who may be traveling on the roads between 11 and 12. And so getting them out on the road, I think earlier is helpful. Second of all, from a communication standpoint, I know I've heard from several of you about this with the same confusion. When we issue a parking ban, so if I were to issue a parking ban for tonight, essentially, right? It would be for Wednesday because it's Wednesday 1 a.m. to 6 a.m. That can be confusing to people. They may think it's tomorrow overnight when in fact you should put your car off the street on Tuesday before you go to bed. So from a communication standpoint, it also helps to be able to say the parking ban is Tuesday. And so before you go to bed on Tuesday, make sure your car's off the street. So again, if I think if we're successful with the pilot, if residents continue to respond in the way that they have, certainly anticipate being able to come back and make some permanent changes to codify it. This like I said, we think is good, irregardless of what system we use. And so we thought it was worth, shifting to it now. One of the reasons it's important for us to do this is, in case, we think this could become effective. I did the math around the third week of January if we hit our, the right deadlines for public notice. So we could start implementing the 11 p.m. Parking ban this season. And so certainly if we wanted to do that and we wanted to tow cars, it would be important to have the legal authority to do so, right? So pretty straightforward, really strong support from the public works staff. And ask for your approval, and if it's approved, we'll bring it back at the next meeting for a second reading.
So moved.
Okay, and the motion would include scheduling this for a second reading on January 7th, 2025?
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay, and a second, questions?
Yeah, just I think Councilor Gearing raised this point last time. If the businesses that are open after 11 PM, or if there's events in the downtown, like just, make sure your guys are, I
Yeah.
don't think there's any reason to not pass
Yeah.
this ordinance, but just make sure they're aware, like, Barre Social Club is having an event tonight. They probably will go
Yeah.
late, like.
Yeah, and I think they, the parking lots tend to be done last because they're, people generally aren't coming in, people are coming in the morning, so they don't have the priority to do those first things first. So to the extent, maybe Gusto's is open a little bit past this time, and anyone from Gusto's is parked right behind the building here, I really can't imagine that that'll be an issue. We also have, our police officers are the ones who are initiating the tows based on calls from the Public Works Department. So they also, have the ability to use that type of discretion if they see a lot of cars parked here and, maybe there's something at the Opera House, for example, as well. So they're able to make, a judgment call if as needed for situations like that.
Thank you. Bern Rose, did you have a question?
Hi, thank you. Yes, I understand that there's a fine and a towing fee. And as this is a new ordinance that we're working on, I'm wondering, is there any chance, this doesn't involve me or anybody that I know, but a fine of $250 and then a towing fee of $125 is a lot for somebody who might have thought that Wednesday was supposed to be the date that you had to park off the street when it was really tonight, kind of a thing. So have you had any people for whom that $250 fine has not they haven't been able to pay it, or that there's been a misunderstanding of how and when the times are? Just wondering if we can be kind to our citizens as well as helping them to see the importance of not parking on the street during the parking ban times. Thank you.
Hi, yeah, thanks, Bern. Most people who have been towed at this point have been repeat offenders, and several of them have been out-of-towners. So we try to use some discretion when we can. However, we do, try to apply these things as equally as possible. Nobody likes to pay a tow fee, and so we recognize that. But by the same token, we've also heard, well, I didn't know that you couldn't park on the streets. And the fact is that, under the prior rules, nobody could park on the street, right? So one of the people who did get towed said, I didn't know there was any parking ban at all. And so I think we get into a slippery slope if we try to inject that type of subjective nature into it. Again, I think there's a little bit of a, there's a little bit of slippery ground there about who can demonstrate hardship and who can't, and how you judge that. The reality is that we've asked residents to stay informed, and there's multiple ways for them to get informed about it. And the people who have been towed so far have tended to be repeat offenders who on multiple occasions have been found in the same parking spots across multiple storms.
Thank you.
So thank you. So it's not just been a misunderstanding or a miscommunication. I was unaware of the towing fee in addition to the fine. And I remembered, Mayor Lozon, you said that fine was $250, and so that's $375. And I really get why it's so important. Do we know that charging that much money is what gets people's attention? Or do we know that charging that much money is necessary? Or could the fine be $100? And then you add that towing fee, that's $225, that's a savings of $100. Just thinking about, we have so many things that we're doing in the city to help people who don't have a lot of money. And I don't know what it costs us to have to, if we're having a fine, is the fine appropriate for the crime? I guess that's what I'm looking at. It feels like a lot to me. Thanks.
Thank you. Lisa Liotta, did you have a question?
Yeah, hi. I'm wondering, rather than have the parking ban in the downtown area be discretionary when it's in place, thinking that we've got a number of businesses moving in, like Foxy's, we've got Tally, Gusto's, and another, any number of establishments that are open after 11 p.m. If it would be possible to designate an area where people could park, and maybe that's behind City Hall, that would have a different parking ban time. Maybe they would still go till 1 a.m. or even 2 a.m. to allow the bars and everything to close. Because if that ban is in effect, it just doesn't feel right that it's discretionary is all. That's all.
No, it's a good thought. I mean, what I heard the manager say is that it would be very helpful if people didn't park on the roadways, that's essential. So, you mentioned some establishments in the downtown, and a lot of folks who patronize those establishments, myself included, tend to park on Main Street. Noted that I shouldn't be parking on Main Street after 11 p.m. And, I heard the manager say that and I suspect as we get more into the program, we'll probably be able to make this a little more definitive, but what I heard the manager say tentatively and trying to help is that if you're one in, for example, the Merchants Row parking lot, the Enterprise Alley parking lot, that those are not as high a priority.
Correct.
And the drivers generally are not hitting, for lack of a better word, hitting those areas first at 11 p.m. They're generally going to be waiting until after 1 a.m. when the establishments have closed anyway.
Absolutely correct, Mayor, and I think that's right. And the DPW drivers aren't going around to tell police who to tow. They're doing their routes, which focus on the residential streets of the city, the travel streets of the city, and they're calling in tows when they're coming upon an issue. So they tend to do those lots last, so I would suspect that by default, we would run into few of these types of situations anyway. I would also remind people that that's the beauty about this pilot, which is that if there's no snow, there's no problem, right? So if you're hanging out at Foxy's till 12 and it's not snowing, you can park on Main Street. And so I also suspect that if we do have one of these big events that does trigger this type of snow, by default, there may not be people, if there's a lot of snow on the ground hanging out that late. So I think that these types of conflicts will be minimal. And by the way that the plow truck drivers operate anyway, they're not getting to those parking lots until most people are heading home anyhow. But I agree. I think this is one of those areas that we can certainly look to tinker with as we move forward.
Erica Reel and then Ellen Kay.
So you say there's multiple ways of people getting notices that there's, snow events, but some people don't have multiple ways of getting snow events because they don't have phones or social media or other ways, and they're living in their cars. So phones are the last thing they're getting, and so I'm wondering about those folks, and then they're relying on their cars as their places of being. And I'm just wondering how they're getting these snow events and they're getting their information. So they're getting towed and their homes are being towed, and there's no way of them, you're saying they're repeat offenders, so obviously they're not getting, they're just not getting the information. So I'm just wondering how that works.
Yeah, thanks for the question, Erica. So we have four physical signs, across the city, the main throughways of the city where this is alerted to on message boards, including in the downtown Civic Center message board, which highlights parking available in the auditorium. I'm not aware of anybody who's homeless and lives in their car who's been towed, so if that's the case, please do let me know. But that must be examples from other communities, because that has not happened here. But yeah, I think, if you'd be hard pressed to travel through Barre City and not see one of the signs. For example, if you're coming through Main Street at all, you'll see the one at the Civic Center for sure. If you're coming into the city from the south, from the north, you're seeing them as well there. So you're right, there's no government program that's perfect. I don't think one has been created yet. This one's certainly not. I'm not couching it as perfect, but we, I think, have done our very best to reach as many people as possible. And yeah, please let me know if anybody's been towed who lives in their car. We want to know about that. But that must be an example from another community because that has not been reported to me.
Okay, thank you. Ellen Kay?
Yeah, just to sort of dovetail on some of these comments, I've always said in these meetings that education should be as strenuously done as punishment. So all of the ways that we can continue to educate people about this is that's what works, and that's what I'd love to see. The other thing is just to follow up on some of these other comments about these kinds of things amount to regressive taxes for poor people. So I'm wondering, well, a couple of things. When somebody who's poor gets a fine they can't pay, and then they get another fine they can't pay, it's only a matter of time until there's a warrant. And they lose their job, and they lose their apartment, and all of that. It's very real consequences. So education, A. B, is there an appeal process for people? You say you can't determine hardship ahead of time. Can there be an appeals process like tax abatement stuff that people can pay what they are actually able to pay? Well, wealthy people can afford to do that whenever they want. Just leave your car somewhere. What's a couple of $100, $300? It's a night out. For a poor person, it could be have drastic results. So I'd like to see lots of education. I'd like to see an appeal process for people based on hardship.
Thank you. Raylene Munier?
Maybe just for good measure, there could be some like people's health and wellness, some of the community buildings, the library, the warming shelter, just for even more notice to get the word out.
Thank you. Council, any other questions, comments? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor of the motion as presented, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed? Thank you very much. Motion carries. Council will move to 8B on the agenda. This is to approve the publication of the terms of the sale of Seminary Street and Campbell Place parking lots. Mr. Manager, you want to lead us on this?
Sure, thank you, Mayor. And I'm putting this up on the screen for folks in the audience because this was not included in the packet. This is we are required by state law and by city charter to publicly post notice for any proposed sales of public property. This is the draft notice for the Seminary Street Housing Project, which has received approval from the Development Review Board. It would create 32 units of housing right here in downtown Barre. It would be a flood resilient building with all the housing units above the base flood elevation. Just some real, there's a lot of legalese in this notice, but some of the highlights you will see here. There are 3 properties listed under this public notice, and that is the Seminary Street lot, also commonly known as the Rinker lot, the Campbell Place lot, which is adjacent to it, and then the Campbell lot, which is adjacent to that one. I just want to explain why this third lot is included, and that's because there won't be any construction on that lot. There may be some easements required, and city charter requires that any such easements also be posted for 30 days. So we're being conservative in terms of how the site may end up getting its use and including that parcel in this 30-day notice. The selling price, which has been known for some time, is $1 as folks know about the process here. The city issued a public request call for proposals to develop this land into housing. We sought creative proposals. We indicated that we were open to a competitive selling price, and that we were willing to use some of the tools in our belt, such as TIF. And other tools that tax stabilization, for example. So we put out a public call for proposals. We received one letter of intent from a joint project from DEW, which is the company that built and operates City Place, Downstreet, and Evernorth, who are Downstreet and Evernorth also have been partners on projects, and Downstreet, of course, has a big footprint in Barre City. That is the project that is proceeding. It's, as I mentioned, 32 housing units, and this public notice is in compliance with state law and city charter, and we would get this printed in the Times-Argus if the council approves it, and we would publicly post it as is required by state law as well in I believe 3 other places, but I'll make sure I'll confirm that. It's usually the same places that our agenda is posted. So this will, as I said, that's here on the screen. I mean, it'll be posted on our website, but it's here on the screen for people to see. Council has received copies of it this afternoon, and pretty straightforward document, but happy to answer any questions.
Motion would be in order?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Yes.
Can I ask a question about the covenants? I see that one of the covenants is that it restricts the property to affordable housing use. And I apologize I think this was before my time, so correct me if I'm wrong. But is there any covenant about childcare?
About?
Having childcare on the premises?
No.
No, there is not. That is not a requirement.
Okay. Was that discussed?
Yes. At the time, it was discussed. My recollection, council, and correct me if I'm wrong, was that it was simply going to be prohibitively expensive.
Well, it was also not a great location for childcare, and there are some other locations possible. And there was a small group that was meeting and will probably meet again.
Mm-hmm.
But the flood interrupted things.
And it doesn't fit quite neatly within Downstreet's models as well.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. So there was, I mean, I think the big takeaway, council, is that, and where there could be a point of confusion, is that even though the Campbell lot, which is a little more than half an acre, is listed, the city will have full control over the direction and control of that lot. So in terms of the use of the spaces, that will still be squarely under the purview of the city manager and city council going forward.
Yep.
So motion is made and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion as presented, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, thank you very much. Council, we are at item 8C on the agenda. This is to appoint a council liaison to the Police Advisory Committee.
Yes, so our last meeting was, well, not my last meeting, was Monday? Yes.
Yep.
That was yesterday. Wow, it's been a long 2 days. So yeah, my last meeting was yesterday. It's a 5-member board, which is now fully staffed, thanks to the appointment of POA. And this is a non-voting member of the committee. And the main purpose is to, liaise between the council and the committee, answer questions, help navigate getting the policies and stuff to the city manager, making sure that the priorities of the committee are heard at council meetings and vice versa. And yeah, I've mentioned it to Councilor Guston, and Councilor Guston is willing to take this one on, but the will of the council.
Yeah. Motion to recognize Councilor Guston as the council liaison to the Police Advisory Committee would be in order.
So moved.
Thank you. Second. It's moved and seconded. Is there discussion? You okay with it?
Yes,
Go ahead.
he is representing that accurately, yes.
Okay, awesome. All those in favor of the motion as presented, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, thank you very much. Motion carries. Thank you for your willingness to serve. Council, we're at item 8D on the agenda. This is the consideration of the Berlin Street, Prospect Street stop sign. Mr. Manager, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mayor. So I included in the packet a memo and the full VHB report, as well as Director Baker's initial assessment of this issue. I know this has been a challenging issue, and I think the outcome of the report that was commissioned mirrors the recommendations made by Brian. And I know Brian, yeah, he's on. So Brian, feel free to speak up if I misspeak. But VHB conducted a review of this request applying the MUTCD standards. And as you can see from their analysis, they almost verbatim came up with Director Baker's findings. The only warrant under MUTCD that was a concern was the vegetation, which, as I think I mentioned when this first came to the council, Brian has spoken with the owner, and there's a commitment to keep that clear. So, I think this is up for the council to decide. In my memo, I make the point that, we've applied a standard. I know that people individually may not agree with the application of the standard. I just urge the council to be cautious about setting a precedent. I want to be very clear that neither mine nor Brian's feelings will be hurt on whatever you decide. So I want to be very, very clear about that. I think it's important to, from a process standpoint, for the council to be cognizant that, in this particular situation, we applied a standard that resulted in a recommendation. That recommendation was disputed by the residents, which they're right to do, of course. The issue was reviewed by an independent consultant, and they came up with a recommendation. Again, the council, as I mentioned in the memo, and as I don't have to tell you, the council can override any decision Brian or I make at any point for any reason. I just urge caution because overriding a decision that's in application of a standard makes it very difficult to make similar, or to not grant similar actions or similar requests in the future, right? So we may get a request for a stop sign that nobody here agrees with. But taking this action today would be very difficult to not grant it because this stop sign was also not warranted by the standard. So again, I think, you should think about this from a process standpoint. As I said, Brian and I will still show up to work tomorrow. The sun will still rise in the east, set in the west. So our feelings will not be hurt. I just urge your caution because these things tend to be cyclical, and it sends a message to residents that they can come appeal these decisions. And I don't want you having to deal with these resident disputes. I don't think you want to deal with these resident disputes. You certainly can if you want to, but we do provide you a buffer, and we do try to give you objective findings. So I think that's more important in this debate or in this issue than the substance of it. A stop sign is not hard to install. It's just a caution for what it may mean in the future. So, Brian, is there anything that you would add from the substantive from the report, or anything I missed?
No, I think you covered it pretty well.
Okay, thank you. Yes.
I have 3 questions. I wonder, one, will this be reconsidered if Prospect Heights is built? 2, are there other traffic slowing measures that we can implement? Because while I hear what you're saying about the guidelines don't warrant a stop sign, we have people who live in the neighborhood who say it's really difficult to get in and out of their neighborhood, and we want to be respectful of that. So how can we make this intersection more or slow traffic down? And then my other question is were these same guidelines used for other stop signs that are in the city? Because there seems to be sometimes some very random stop signs. And so maybe that should be addressed as well.
Thank you, Councilor Spalding. So I'll address them in order. I believe that it would warrant, once we know more about Prospect Heights, I think that could certainly reopen this conversation. One of the warrants is average daily traffic count, so that would certainly be an impact here. I mean, one of the other ones is accidents, and hopefully that's not the one that we use, but you know, if there is more traffic, obviously there's a reason that control measure might be needed. Your second question was other control measures. So VHB didn't recommend any for this site. You know, we could certainly explore other options that may be warranted, and you know, Brian and I could look at the MUTCD to see what may be warranted for an intersection like this. And your third question was other stop signs. You're absolutely right. I think there's stop signs that don't meet the MUTCD standards. I don't think that all stop signs that were installed, that the standard was used for them. It's something that I started, and when, you know, Brian and I got this request and we decided, how are we gonna look at it? Like, how are we gonna make a decision? And we decided, let's apply MUTCD. So I certainly cannot speak for other stop signs that may or may not comply with MUTCD. Many of them probably do, but I agree with you that there's probably some that don't. And so I can't speak to whether that standard was applied consistently beforehand. This is the first such request that has happened since I started, and we decided that this was a good way to treat them, because we also know, and I think some of you have been copied on an email from a resident on Hill Street, who's also interested in a stop sign in the Hill Street, Camp Street, Nelson Street area. I think Councilor Shambell. So we thought that, you know, when that came in, we thought, oh, good, we can apply the same standard there, right? And so that's how we can make sure that resident gets the same treatment as this resident got. So that's a long way of saying no. I don't know if the standard was applied before.
So if I could just follow up, I think part of the concern is that other neighborhoods, other major roads have stop signs, and so it feels like, why can't this one? And I understand why, because we've applied these standards, but I think to speak to the people who are here and who live in those neighborhoods, or who are joining us online and are having a difficult time getting in and out of their neighborhoods, that they're frustrated, and I can appreciate that frustration.
I do too. I think that when I was thinking about this issue on Friday, and actually it made it into the memo, because that's how it came to me a lot as I was thinking about this issue. Different stakes, but similar to the buyouts, right? So the buyouts, we communicated a standard, we set a standard that we were going to apply. That standard helped some people, and it didn't help other people. I think it was very difficult to hear the stories of the people who it didn't help, right? And certainly the people that it did help were very grateful. But we mostly heard from those that it didn't help. And so, again, I think that it's important. I think it's important that government try to treat issues consistently and fairly across the board. Applying the MUTCD standards is a way to do that. When we were making those very difficult buyout determinations, again, it's not a MUTCD standard, but is one that was sort of recommended to us from people who've gone through this before. And again, I think it created a positive outcome. It certainly wasn't the popular outcome, but I think it was the right outcome. So I don't know if that's a great answer to your question. I share the frustration. I'm a walker too in the city. I walk my dog, I ride the bikes with my kids. I've talked to Brian about stop signs and places that I walk, and he's told me that they're not warranted, right? And so Brian treats me the same way Brian treats other residents, which is what he should be doing. And I could tell Brian to put one there, but I also think that I should be treated the same way that other residents are. So it's not an easy decision, and you know, that's why I'm very candid with you. I will not have my feelings hurt if you go the other way. I'm just worried about. I just want you to be cognizant that the next request may not be so clear or easy, and it would be harder to say no to it.
Thank you. Yes, Councilor Shambell.
One of the big concerns for me is that I think this is an endemic problem in the whole city in terms of speeding, and, you know, some of these downhill runs like Hill Street are wonderful, but if you're crossing the street and they're speeding up, it's not comforting. And I just wonder if assuming we apply the standard as we can, what can we do to calm traffic? I mean, at the end of the day, I think the issue is slowing people down. And, I'm not sure that speed bumps do it. I think, you get a bump the first time and then you're a little bit more careful the second time, but then you speed back up. Like I said, in Burlington, they've put these islands in roads where you literally have to slow down. You have no option. And I know that doing something like that at this point, when money is only a huge issue, is, it's another thing. But if we're going to apply the standard, I think we need to be looking at alternatives that are going to solve some of the problems, and I dare say it's not just Prospect Street and Hill Street. I'm sure there are other spaces in the city where it's also a problem.
Councilor Guston?
I guess I just want to strongly echo what both Councilor Spalding and Councilor Shambell are saying. One of the reasons I voted to move the study forward is because I asked and was told it would include other traffic calming recommendations. So I'm a little disappointed that we did not get traffic calming recommendations back. Councilor Wasizak and I have been working with a group of our neighbors on Merchant Street, which has one of those stop signs, right? And I don't know whether it would be approved today, but it is there, Merchant and Warren. People stop and then they slam on the gas again. Yeah. And they are going just as fast down that second supposedly protected stretch of Merchant Street as they are on that straightaway as you enter the city. And we've had conversations with residents in that area about what other things we can do about traffic calming, because in that area, neither a speed bump nor a stop sign solved those issues. So we absolutely have to be more serious about a citywide program of slowing people down, of encouraging people to drive more safely. And I'm not talking like a public awareness campaign, because I think everyone can see the signs and know they shouldn't be speeding. I'm talking, as Councilor Shambell just described, like things that physically force people to drive more slowly. And I completely understand that oftentimes stop signs are just a pause in someone who's very determined to keep speeding. I turn that intersection on Merchant and Warren every single day, multiple times a day. I watch it happen. So that is a very long way of saying, in full agreement with everyone who has said that we absolutely have got to do better about slowing cars down in the city, and that has got to include some form of infrastructure addressing that.
Councilor Stockwell?
If this were a larger issue, something involving infrastructure of a more substantial sort, I would certainly defer to the Public Works Director, who has my respect and my full faith. But this is a hyper-local issue, and it seems to me that if over 60 people in an incredibly small neighborhood say, yes, this is an issue, I'm inclined to think that a stop sign will not have a huge downside effect and may make it a little safer. And I also, to the crash issue, I think sometimes people don't report minor crashes because of the cost to their insurance. So I know that I've seen some fender bumpers there because the evidence is in the road, but I think people don't necessarily, that doesn't necessarily become a police report. So my inclination is, unless someone has a better thing that we can do for that stop. The other thing is, as a pedestrian, pedestrians were not considered in that report. I understand that's not the scope, that's fine. But as someone who walks there a lot and sees other people walking, it's hard to get across Prospect Street. I run while I still can. So it is a concern to me.
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah, Nicholas, to your point about the importance of applying standards and consistency, I do understand all of that. But I think that, process for the sake of process isn't always a good thing. And I think it's our job as counselors to help residents, when they're hitting an issue with the process, say that this standard, this process is not working And you're right, sometimes we're gonna have to overturn the manager, sometimes we're gonna have to tell our constituents, sorry, we can't get this one done. But just, I just think that that's important too, is that part of the reasons we have elected officials is to push back against government processes when they're not working for people. And I think Councillor Stockwell makes a good point, and I think it ties to Councillor Spaulding's initial point of that, like, the neighborhood is telling us what we're doing now is not working. And as Councillor Guston said, is the answer a four-way stop sign? We still don't know because this survey doesn't really tell us all that much. But what we're doing now is not, so like leaving here tonight and just saying, no, we're not getting the stop sign and that's the end of the conversation, that doesn't feel like an outcome that's tenable for me. So is it, we can take down stop signs just as quickly as we put them up? Can we do some of that traffic calming? Can we look 3-6 months out after the winter and say, what traffic calming can we do up there? And can we throw up a stop sign for the intervening period, right? Like, what can we do?
I mean, we can do whatever the council directs us to do. Right. I mean, this study, our application of the standard told us one thing, this study told us, confirmed that. And again, this one again may seem obvious to people that it's a failure of the standards, but it's an application of the standards. It's a way to make a decision objectively and apply, and use it for the next request, right? So we can see what other traffic calming may be compliant with the standards at this location. So that's certainly an option. And if the council wants to put a stop sign, that's fine. I do think that, just to caution people, it will in Councilor Stockwell, right, you may still have to run across Berlin for a while because people will have to get used to it, right? So it's not going to be an immediate solution, right, to the issue either.
They may be so busy looking at the stop sign, they don't look at you.
I can deal.
Which is a problem.
Yeah, so, like I said, we're applying standards. I think that, in my opinion, that's what's important for us to do, so that we treat requests equally, so that, as I mentioned, like when I go to Brian and say, hey, I walked over here the other day, was kind of, what did you think about stop sign here? He can tell me, no, it doesn't make sense, right? And so my request gets the same treatment as the neighborhood's request. I understand Councilor Wozniak, your point about process, but, from the staff's perspective, it's important that we think it's important that we can give you objective findings. And I agree. And as I mentioned in the memo, you can override any decision at any point. I happen to believe this one is not arbitrary or, capricious. There's a standard associated with it, but it doesn't mean that you can't overturn it. You can overturn anything at any point. It may be more difficult, right? One of the requests on Hill Street is for a stop sign on both Nelson and Camp. I think that's a little unsafe, to be honest with you. But you may have a hard time convincing those neighbors, who may also be 60 in number, to put 2 stop signs there, which I think would be real problematic from a safety perspective. Doesn't mean you can't. It's harder to convey that decision if it's not applying the same types of rules.
Okay, we won't get into that one. Councilor Spaulding.
So in light of the, I'm inclined to continue to uphold the guidelines and the standards and the report, but, and that's a very big but, we need to have a plan for how we're going to calm traffic. And to Councilor Guston's point, we didn't have any other suggestions. And I feel like if we just say, no, we're not going to do it, that then it's off the agenda, it's over, and there's no plan to move forward. So I would be fine to approve and uphold the Public Works Director and your assessment and follow these guidelines, but in the meantime, we're going to do X, Y, and Z to make sure we're slowing traffic. And then we can also use those same things on Merchant Street, on Hill Street, on you name the street, because there are lots of streets where people are speeding around.
Yeah, and Brian, sorry.
Just jump in just for a minute. I'm a little disappointed. I agree with pretty much everything you said, but we sat here at a council meeting, and Ms. Barre, I have to apologize to you, because we made a commitment to Ms. Perry that we would put her in touch with the consultant, and that wasn't done. I understand mistakes happen, but it wasn't done, and it wasn't necessarily just your commitment, it was the commitment of the council. So I apologize to you for that, because had I didn't know that, and I want you to know, I didn't know that until I read this report, and my first reaction was, you know, damn it, I made that commitment to you. So I'm sorry, that didn't happen. That commitment needs to be honored, so if you would like to follow up with this consultant, we will get you that contact information. If you'd like to speak with the consultant, I understand there would be a charge to the city, but if you'd like to speak to the consultant, because perhaps you have information the consultant wasn't aware of, I'd like to give you that opportunity, and again, apologize to you that we didn't honor that commitment we made. And secondly, as we approved the traffic study, and you know, my understanding was that in the absence of a recommendation of a stop sign, there would be included in the report traffic calming measures. Hey, you could do this, you could try this, you could try this. And I think this would be a lot easier read if we could give folks a path forward. So this is, you know, a little bit of it's okay. It's you know, it's frustrating that it didn't happen the way the council wanted it to happen and the way I thought it was going to happen, but we can make, you know, it's not too late to make it happen. So I'd like to, as quickly as possible, you know, look, there were supposed to be traffic calming measures included in this report. They're not there. They need to be there so that we can, and then the staff needs to, and the manager need to quickly consider them and then come back to the council and say, we're going to do this, you know, so maybe we can't do the stop sign because, and I agree that government needs to be predictable and standards need to be predictable, but we didn't quite hit the mark in terms of what the council expectations were, just for those two reasons. Other than that, I appreciate the work you do, and I agree with what you said in your report to the council, but those were two kind of critical things that we sort of missed the bullseye on. Was there somebody else, Councilor Schaumburg?
Going back to Councilor Wozniak's suggestion of if you can put a sign up, you can take a sign down. And can you put a sign up for the winter and get through that time period? And concurrently, this is another thing on our plate. Another suggestion that came from Hill Street was, oh, we could just get those big barrels of plants and put it out in the road, and we'll make pretty flowers in it, and it'll look nice. I mean, I know I'm sounding sarcastic, but I'm not totally sarcastic in that. I'm sort of serious. But I love rules. I mean, don't get me wrong. A rule is there, I can follow it, I can do it. But I really think, and I came here, I just have to say this, ready to say I'm gonna vote against, okay? But just listening to all of this, we can fix this temporarily while we take the time. I mean, we've got so much other stuff on our plate. It's beyond ridiculous.
Councilor Stockwell.
I like Councilor Schaumburg's idea that we put up a stop sign temporarily, we go forward with looking at other traffic calming possibilities and reevaluate them.
If I just might, if you're.
Yeah, I couldn't support that, Council, because it goes against the predictability, it goes against, listen, I love engaged neighborhoods. So I have the council's commitment that the stop sign will go up and then it will come down. Or is this just, you know, more we have I'd prefer I think the council's engaging, I think I'm speaking, I think I have the floor. I wouldn't be interested in making a decision that runs contrary to predictability and contrary to this, and it is a science that goes into stop signs and goes into traffic lights and goes into traffic calming measures. Yes, Councilor Gustin.
No, go ahead.
Two things. I would really like to hear our Public Works Director's thoughts on a temporary stop sign. my gut sense, and not a public works employee, is that a temporary stop sign is unsafe. Because I've lived places where they've added a stop sign, and I still blow through the stop sign, 2 months after they've added it, because you build up a muscle memory of going through an intersection, and eventually, you do learn to stop at the stop sign. So putting up a stop sign temporarily feels like we sort of get the worst of both worlds, I'll be honest with you.
Yes.
It's recommended when you put up in a new stop sign, if it's going to be really new, to put up some warning signs with flashing lights like 50 yards before that, so that there's a notice, so that people get a notice something has changed, which I realize would be more expensive and more extensive.
Yes.
Nicholas, how quick of a turnaround on getting the consultant in touch with not just Sandra, but the neighborhood group writ large, and then coming back with other traffic calming?
Don't know, but probably weeks, or maybe, I don't know, it's holiday season, I don't know. They probably wouldn't engage till the end, to the beginning of the year. I mean, for what it's worth.
Well, that's only 2 weeks away, and we don't actually have a meeting until then, but.
It probably wouldn't start till then, is what I'm
suggesting. I think we need to make that, and I can't emphasize that enough. I mean, I enjoy working with you, I have the highest respect for you, but it's so important that when the council makes, a commitment to someone, and you may have heard it differently, or, hey, it seemed like a good idea at the time, I'm trying to save the city money, but, that was the council understanding, is that we'd have these traffic calming measures. We wouldn't be having this discussion right now about, well, temporary stop sign, well, if the report had simply included the information that we wanted it to have in it. So, I think in terms of, again, giving, I gave Ms. Perry my word that she'd have access to the consultant. For me, it's as simple as that, and I'm sure for the council it is as well. So that needs to happen. They have a phone number. Just share her contact information. And if he doesn't return your phone calls after couple 3, please feel free to call me.
I just assumed you by email, and I was only expecting maybe to send an email that just kind of laid out my concerns and what we thought was supposed to be included in the report.
Yeah.
As been mentioned that before the study was done, now it's supposedly done, so I don't know.
Well, for me, what I had committed to you is that you would have your concerns would be heard directly through your concerns would be directed to the consultant, and I could ensure that I didn't have to burn up Mr. Storella Castro's time or Brian's time or anybody's time. We were going to give you direct access so we could make sure that if you had anything to say to that consultant, it got said. And I'm sorry, that didn't happen, but it's going to happen. And then, council, unfortunately, the best I can offer under the circumstances is to, I will support accepting the recommendation, of course, pending Ms. Perry having the opportunity to speak directly with the consultant. Maybe the consultant changes his mind, I don't know. But really the best, unfortunately, that we can offer at this time is to make the identification of traffic calming measures, not just in that area, but it could also be applicable to other areas in the city. I'm not even aware of what, we just talked about planters and things that look like bollards, but, we don't really know what we're talking about. It would be really helpful as we deal with some of these issues to have a definition of and identification of specific traffic calming measures. And I think it's going to be invaluable going forward. So, like I said, for me, I'm going to support the recommendation of the engineer. There are going to be some things that obviously have to happen. I wish we could resolve it today. We can't. Amy, you had your hand up for a while?
Yeah, I just want to mention the Transportation and Public Works Committee meets in a couple of days, and one of the items on their agenda is to, which is great that there's more members on that committee now, so it can meet. But one of the items on their agenda is to look at their committee charge, and maybe some of the issues that are broader than just that one intersection. Maybe council could give them some input on how you want to cover that around about 2019, when Lucas Herring was mayor, he was doing neighborhood meetings, and in our meeting for sort of the Berlin Smith Fossvine kind of neighborhood that I'm in, a lot of our meetings, we had some focus on crime, and we also focused a lot on traffic and pedestrian safety. I noticed a radical difference in people's driving behavior when some crosswalks were painted. And it's really hard on Berlin Street to keep the crosswalks there, because by the time you plow the snow, and there's a lot of wear and tear from all the traffic on Berlin Street. But I would just notice when I was walking my dog at the time, a radical behavior in whether people stopped and how quickly they stopped when the crosswalk was actually painted. So just some little things like that we talked about. But the avenues for that were those neighborhood meetings we were having. And then I think also some of us talked to the transportation committee, and then things kind of got odd because of COVID, but things that happened were the crosswalk being painted. And then also I lobbied for a 25-mile-an-hour speed limit sign on Berlin Street as you're coming off Route 62, because I think there was no sign there that told people that the speed was dropping from 40 to 25 there. You know, can I say that stops, or that speed sign slowed anybody down? I don't know, but at least that helped. And I guess that's another solution here is, are there enough speed limit signs? Because I know if I'm coming in from Barrytown, you know, from the Airport Road area, coming back down past Barry Gardens and that kind of thing, boy, do people tailgate you if you're actually driving 25. And that's despite all the digital signs and that kind of stuff. But, you know, are there enough 25-mile-an-hour speed signs in that area? Because that's not a change. That's just more signage. So just a thought.
Thank you. Lisa Liotta?
Yes, I was going to say that I think if council is going to be considering alternative traffic calming measures, it'd be really, really important to understand kind of a ballpark cost on each of those measures, because it feels to me like a stop sign is a pretty low cost solution, and some of these other things can get quite expensive. So that's just something to keep in mind. I'd like to see that as a resident as well.
Understood. Thank you. Yes.
We asked the Public Works Director what his estimate of, what he thought about a stop sign and its cost, and he never got an opportunity to actually respond.
Oh, is Brian?
I am here, and I think I agree with what Amanda said, that a temporary stop sign is probably not a good idea, and particularly to install it in the wintertime with the questionable road conditions. I would put against that to, you know, if you did a temporary, I would recommend to push it off till spring, only because at least the snow, ice would not be a factor. But as far as the cost wise, it's, you know, probably less than $100 to get a stop sign. And we can have that put in by, you know, the backhoe and the guy in a matter of, you know, an hour or two. So it's not a big ticket item, but I don't recommend a temporary one.
Thank you.
Thank you. Council, where do we go from here? Yes, yes. Sandra, would you mind coming up to the table? The mic doesn't pick you up.
I just want to say a couple different things. That, again, if we want to go by the standard, both our Public Works Director had one number of accidents. This report has another number of accidents, and we have witnessed even more than that. So in what we have witnessed meets the standards of the MUTCD. What we have witnessed and have evidence of meets those standards for not just this year, but many other years before. Probably wouldn't get proof of it at this point. But so in our opinions, and by the way, it was 67 people that signed that petition, which represented, it's a good representation, I think, of the neighborhood, because that ends up being 97.1% of the people that were asked. Only 2 declined to sign for whatever reasons. They didn't even give me reasons. Some people just don't sign petitions in general. So that's 97% of the people that were asked immediately signed it with no questions asked. So it's not just a few of us who showed up tonight. It's not just my opinion. It's a problem that the whole neighborhood has seen. 97% of the people agreed. And from what we can see, it does meet the standard according to the number of accidents that happen there. So that's number one. We do think it meets the standard with the MUTCD, okay? And precedent was already set in the fact that other stop signs have been put up in the past without any studies at all. So the precedent is already there. This is not going to set it. It's already there. That's what we're saying. It's already there. And this road will remain the only one coming into the city. And that's important because it's like people are coming in from a rural area outside of the city. And it's almost like they don't even realize they're in the city until they get downtown. So it's like this road is to some people, a town road that they can go 40, 50 miles on. And it's not. They need to know it's the city when they get to the city, and the stop sign will help them know that, oh, I got to stop here. I must be in the city now. Where is that speed limit sign? Oh, yeah. So it's more than, and for the cost of a couple of stop signs, let's put them up. And let's say a year or two down the road, we see no difference whatsoever. I'll pay to take them down if that's what it costs. I'll do that. But I think they'll make a difference. And there isn't any proof that says they won't. There isn't any other suggestions at this point. And there isn't any harm in putting them up that we can find. There is precedent already set, and we believe it meets the MUTCD guideline anyway because of the number of accidents that occur there. So in our eyes, there's really no question. It meets the standard. It doesn't cost a lot to put a couple of signs up. I don't know if you remember the evening I left here in kind of a huff. I never wanted anyone to spend $2,500 on the study. And I have to say, I'm not sure I believe everything about the study either. I know that's kind of damning the company that did the report. However, I have no reports, and I asked people to let me know if they saw anybody sitting there doing a count. I put it right out in Front Porch Forum, let me know. And I had one report that somebody was measuring the intersection. Somebody was sitting possibly on Areoli Avenue. They weren't sure who it was, but they were gone by mid-morning. So I really question whether really 12 hours of observation happened. I'll just put that out there. There's no way to prove that one way or the other anyway. So that's, those are the major things. I think it meets the standards. It needs something, definitely. We have witnessed all kinds of things. And the last one I saw, if the dent in her driver's side door had been maybe 10 inches more or less, she probably would have ended up with a broken back. It's just somebody is going to get killed or mutilated for life at that intersection way too soon. And I just don't want to see that happen.
Thank you.
So do we have an agreement that we will continue the study with more input? Is that?
Well, I'd like to see two. I would like to honor the council's commitment to give Ms. Perry access to the, I don't know, honestly, ma'am, I don't know how much weight someone can put. They look to traffic data, and there may be folks in the neighborhood who say, well, there were 3 or 4 more accidents there, and we'll swear to it. Not that I ever think you would do something like this, but that could be a little self-serving. If a neighborhood really wanted a stop sign, you just all swear to God that there have been 5 accidents there. I'm not saying you'd ever do that. So I question whether a traffic engineer would consider that, would just take someone's word for it. I don't know the answer to that question. But what I'd like to see the council do going forward is, number one, simply give you access to the engineer, because that's what I committed to do. And it hasn't been done yet, and I honor my commitment. So I made that commitment to you. I would like to offer that to you, and I'd like that to happen sooner rather than later. And then also the second issue was, as Councilor Guston pointed out, this traffic study needs to be amended quickly because, unfortunately, the directives of the council were apparently misunderstood, and it wasn't understood that it would also include traffic calming suggestions, and that wasn't in the report. That's how I'd like to move forward, but, you know, I'd like to make it a priority. If we could, please. Yes.
Could I make a motion that we just table this until our next meeting, and we could give Ms. Perry an opportunity to talk to the engineer in that time, and then also maybe have some traffic calming measures at the next meeting so that we can make a more informed decision?
Yeah, that would be great. I don't know that if, as long as we have an understanding, I don't think we will have, I think what Councilor Spalding, I'm not trying to speak for you, but I think what you meant was we want the council to understand what a variety of traffic calming measures are. We understand that they may not, all of them may not necessarily be applicable to this particular intersection. Does that? Can someone give us a traffic calming 101, traffic calming for dummies?
I don't know if we can arrange that by the
Of course.
7th. I don't know if we can arrange that by the 7th, but I think the city has spent $2,500 on this. Brian and I have spent an inordinate amount of hours on this that we shouldn't. With Mayor, I appreciate your comments. With all due respect, I would, I also see the writing on the wall. I think you should approve the stop sign. I think,
I'm not willing to do that.
and that's,
Well, it's.
I'd prefer that me and Brian not spend more time on an issue that I believe there are 4 votes to enact. And I know that that's your prerogative, but I think that we've already spent $2,500. Ms. Perry and I agree on that. I didn't want to do that study either, and I think she knows that. So I appreciate, for where you're coming from, Mayor, as well, but I think Brian and I would prefer to work on other things. And we understand that there's support for this, and that's fine. As I mentioned at the very beginning, my feelings are not hurt.
Well, if we expose the city to liability by, there is some liability that you need to consider. We put a stop sign there. We've already been told by the Public Works Director that this would not be the greatest time to do it. Someone loses control because they don't notice a stop sign until the last minute. Someone is seriously hurt. And I don't want to be sitting in court saying, yeah, and the city went against all the science and just did what they wanted to do because it was popular. That's how people get sued. And so, listen, I'm not touching this with a 10-foot pole. So there may be 4 votes. Mine isn't one of them. Councilor Guston?
I totally respect, Nicholas, that you, manager, that you spent a lot of time on this already. But knew a but was coming. I would support Councilor Spalding's motion and the mayor's recommendations that this report does not contain traffic calming measures, recommendations for traffic. If the report does not recommend a stop sign, what we had asked was, how else do we slow people down on Prospect Street? And I think the recommendations by necessity of the way these things are done are probably going to have to be specific to Prospect Street. But I would actually love to see a traffic calming 101 presentation in the future, if that's something the Transportation Committee is going to take up, or whoever would do that. Because I think, as everyone has said here tonight, we need to have a conversation about how we slow people down in Barre City. This is one neighborhood coming before council, but it is happening in other neighborhoods. We're all hearing from residents. We're all seeing it. So we need to sort of have some specific recommendations for this situation, and also make sure that we are having discussions going forward about how we can apply other things to other situations.
So how does this, really, how does this resolution burn up any more of your time or Brian's time? Other than calling the traffic consultant and saying, look, I'm sorry, we neglected to do 2 things. Ms. Perry's going to be contacting you. We want you to listen to her. And then secondly, we need to have you amend your report to include specific traffic calming measures recommended for the Berlin Street intersection. And oh, by the way, so we're spending money. I think we all understand that. But we're not, I think we're intentionally not burning up your time. I'm asking the folks, the traffic engineers, to come to the next city council meeting and I think this is what Councilor Spalding was asking, and you were much nicer than this. Give a traffic calming for dummies presentation for an hour or 45 minutes so that we can understand what potential traffic calming measures are. And that way, I think we all fully recognize that we'll be burning a little bit of money, but we're not asking to take up the time of the manager or the public works director. We understand you have a lot of things.
Yeah, so we'd have to, I don't even know if VHB is available to come on the 7th, right? So that would be.
Well, we do the best we can.
So we could certainly talk to them about coming in to do a present. I just want to make sure it's clear that it's not a commitment for the 7th, because I can't dictate their schedule.
We'll do the very best we can.
We'd have to negotiate an extension with a scope. So that would be for me and Brian again. And then Brian would have to manage get them to the site, get them the scope to the scope of work. We would have to review whatever comes in, and so it's not an inordinate amount of time, but it's still time that we have to dedicate to something that that.
And with apology, I accept that. I accept what you're saying. I understand that it is a bit of your time, a bit of Brian's times, but with apologies, that's what I'm hearing, that the direction that is, majority of the council would like to go. Am I hearing anything differently, council?
No.
Has everyone heard it clearly?
Yeah.
Does everyone understand?
Is there officially?
Okay, so we're all on the same page.
All on the same page.
Brian, how you doing? You understand it?
I will be at it tomorrow morning.
Okay.
Thank you.
So this will cost more money for me to be in contact, like Nicholas said in the beginning.
People generally, consultants charge money. But it's money that would have been spent. I think the council was committed to it. And again, Mrs. Perry, what I heard clear, I know the commitment we made to you.
Yeah.
It didn't
no,
happen.
I mean, as far as they're concerned, it wasn't included in that 2,500 to start, so it'll be more on top of that.
Yep. I mean, things, in order to get the right answers, sometimes it
And I just want
costs
to
money.
clear up one other thing too. It's not so much, again, what brought us in here was the number of accidents, not necessarily the speeding. So we all talk about traffic calming, which would happen with stop signs, probably. But I've had people tell me too, when, say, 3 or 4 cars get to that intersection, oftentimes people will stop and they'll motion somebody to go through when they really shouldn't. So when it's a 4-way stop, there are laws about who goes first. So that would clear up that confusion for everybody coming at that intersection at the same time, because it's, you want to go and they're saying to go, but, it's kind of iffy. So if everybody had the stop sign, it requires everybody to be responsible to get through that intersection safely.
Yes.
My last word on the subject. I just want to say something about local knowledge. When people take this kind of time and energy to come to council, to do a petition, to come back to meeting after meeting, it's not a little issue for them. And it's kind of like when Councilor Guston was talking about hyper-local knowledge about the floods, like it wasn't on the flood map. No one looked at the flood map and said, oh, that little pocket there is going to flood. So I really respect if 50 or 60 people are coming with an issue and they're taking their time to come to, this really isn't a huge amount of fun. I mean, it's great for us, but it's not a huge amount of fun. I really respect that it is a problem. Now, it could be that stop signs are not the best solution. I don't know, but I do think it needs warrants. I would have to listen to people in my neighborhood, and I trust that this kind of effort reflects a real problem. That's all.
Yeah, thank you. I honestly, Sandra, I'm sorry it's not happening faster. I truly am. You probably.
Well, I would agree.
You probably don't enjoy looking at me anymore than I like feeling like we're disappointing a neighborhood.
Here, I hate it.
So
I'm going to go home and stand outside for a while. But I just feel that for me, it's just been blown out of proportion since day one, and just a couple of stop signs. And if we have to wait till spring, we have to wait till spring. That would be fine. Put them in, I agree that when there's a new stop sign, they're gonna fly through it. It's just like when they put a stop, they changed the way the airport road comes on to whatever the name of that road is. I can't think of it right now. Never used to be a stop sign there. They put up a new stop sign. I was working at the time and I had a coworker call me and say, hey, there's a new stop sign, be aware. Even if you put up a new stop sign and people are gonna go through it for a little bit, but I agree that in the winter it could make it dangerous because if somebody doesn't see it right away, they'll slam on their brakes and be everywhere else. That makes sense. So if we had to wait till spring, fine, but I really think just needs to be there. It just needs to happen. And
Thank you for your
I really
patience.
hate the thought of spending more time on it myself, or money.
Some
I think we
things
spent way too
take
much
time and
already.
money. That's just the way it is. So council, we're clear? Okay. Yes.
Well, two things. First of all, I 100% agree with the hyperlocal knowledge. I think that's what our residents are bringing to us, and they're telling us that there is a problem, and we're doing our best to address it in a thoughtful and thorough manner. Second of all, I believe Councilor Spalding has a motion on the floor that I would like to second.
Thank you.
Oh.
I made the motion to table.
Oh, okay. Motion is made to table this until, I believe, the 7th?
Yes.
Okay.
Until-
Was there a second to
such
that?
time- until
Oh, there
such
was?
time as the-
All those in
Amanda
favor of the
just-
motion is presented, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed? No. Matter is tabled. Thank you very much.
The people that stop
I
signs.
get it. Okay, council, we are at item 8E on the agenda. This is the ADA procedures briefing. Mr. Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. There's items in the packet in response to a question that came from Councilor Stockwell at the end of last week's meeting. I don't know if all the members of the council got an email. I think most of you did about questions about city's ADA compliance. This first part in the packet shows you sort of the key requirements. They're highlighted here. One's to have a grievance procedure and to designate at least one responsible employee to coordinate ADA compliance. We also are required to undergo a transition plan for structural changes. That is not underway at this point, but we have been in touch with the state in the last several months about that, and they understand that that's a lift, and they do give municipalities some grace in getting that done. So as to the first two requirements that I mentioned, a grievance procedure and a how do they title it? One responsible employee. So there is a grievance procedure on our website. You can see the screenshot is the second page in the packet. It's posted under the HR section, and you can see where the grievance procedure there is listed. We also have the procedures in PDF form, that a little bit more spelled out, and they're also included in your packet, and a grievance compliance form. We also have one, I don't know if responsible employee, but we have one employee listed as the coordinator, and that's me. As the that used to be Rick Taft, and as I mentioned briefly last week, the intention is to have our new HR coordinator, Jean Galliano, take that on, but I wanted her to sort of onboard properly without throwing everything at her. So she's doing terrific, by the way, and she expect her to be onboarded into this role certainly in the next few months, and she will be the point person listed on this webpage. The next part of the packet shows you the grievance procedure that's linked on our website so that you can see that. This is a pretty, this is like a template. I forget which federal agency administers this at the moment, but they basically give you some copy and paste jobs that you can take that are all comply with the ADA, and that's what we have done here. And then the last page of the packet is our grievance form. To my knowledge, certainly since I've been the coordinator, since Rick left city service, there hasn't been any grievances. And I don't believe there were any in Rick's time as well. If they were, they certainly never came to the next step, which would be me. So that's really it. There's not much more else to share. I think the structural survey is a little bit more intense, and there's ways to do some self-surveys. That's something that I'm going to probably hand off to Jean to do when she is fully on board as being the responsible employee. for ADA compliance. So that was it. There's, like, as I mentioned, not too much. I just want to share with you the key basic requirements and how the city is currently in compliance with them.
Thank you. Danielle, did you have a question?
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
We can.
Yeah, I just wanted to, it's a comment. I just wanted to highlight the importance that I'm really glad to hear that you're working on this. And so for folks at the meeting who don't know, I'm the chair of the Barre City River Access Task Force, and we're currently working with the Friends of the Winooski on a grant to explore and identify new river access sites in Barre. We had a meeting today on that. And we're doing this because the city identified river access as a top priority in the All In for Barre event. And as a group, and really as a group that represents the city, our collective vision is that the people of Barre are connected to their local river through access areas and river corridors that are friendly, safe, and accessible to everyone. So I think to truly make that vision a reality, we're thinking beyond sort of the here and now. And this is, again, the importance of having an ADA person for the town is we're planning for sites that meet the needs of as many people as possible. So regardless of their physical abilities, as a straight, white, cisgender person who is neurotypical without mobility or vision impairments, it's hard for me sometimes to fully grasp what accessible to everyone really means. And that's why we're working with people who have lived experience and expertise in accessibility to guide us and help make sure that we aren't missing anything. And having their expertise cannot be understated. I think it's crucial for our success. So again, just kind of highlighting how important it is to have this liaison. And not to be selfish, one thing I've been thinking of is that accessibility isn't just for someone else. So like at some point in my life, whether it's because of age, injury, or illness, or even somebody I love, like I might need extra help to access spaces and those experiences that I value. So I think when we plan for accessibility in mind, we're not just helping others, we might even be helping our future selves and making our whole community stronger and more connected. So I just want to say thank you for working on this. The ADA officer, I think we can't even imagine some of the things that they may help us do and make the city a better place where everybody can thrive. And not just because it's the right thing to do, because it will benefit the city and everyone. So whether it's about river access, parks, or public buildings, I just think it's really important that we're considering this and that we support this position so they can do their work really well. So thanks.
Thank you very much. Byrne Rose.
Thank you. Thanks, Danielle, for that. I appreciate what you said. We have had grievances. Maybe they didn't end up becoming formal grievances. I'm not sure why. But some of the things that you see around City Hall that changed over the last few years is that that door coming in from the Opera House that does not open so that someone who is in a wheelchair or a walker is unable to open that door. Rick put in a doorbell to assist with that until the door could be addressed, because it's not an accessible entry into the building, even though it comes in the back of the building and it has the elevator. It's supposed to be the accessible way. The door opening outside at the Opera House with the automatic door opener gets turned off, and so it's not always operational. I don't know if that's improved. Once I let a few people who opened up City Hall early in the morning know about it. They would check on that when they were unlocking the door, because the Opera House sometimes disengages that. The bathrooms, I haven't been to visit the bathrooms recently, but there was a time where I went and I measured the bathrooms and came to the city before COVID with a proposal for, or maybe it was our COVID money, I don't know when, but there was a proposal for making our bathrooms accessible. And it wouldn't cost a lot of money by retrofitting some of the things that we have and making it be a universal bathroom upstairs. So there are things within City Hall that affect our being able to hire people with disabilities, different disabilities, and for people coming in from the community that got tabled and put out and never were addressed. So they might not have been formal things, but they were addressed in those first proposals you had, Nicholas. I can't remember, I'm sorry, off the top of my head when that was, but there are things that we need to look at to make sure that if we put out a job ad, that anybody can come and work for the city as long as they can do the job. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, did you want to respond?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor, just because it's directly to Bern's questions. So yes, Bern, I think that, I don't know if we're talking about using the grievance word the right way, but yeah, I absolutely remember when we still had an ADA committee that that door that comes down that back hallway into City Hall was an issue, and I know Rick took care of that. I still hear I can still hear the bell when it rings, so I know it gets quite a bit of use. So I'm glad that the committee raised that, and it's from what I can tell from the ringing of the bell, it does get used. So I think that was a great change. We do have, Bern, our first fully accessible ADA bathroom in City Hall, which is in the space that was remodeled for Barre Up, which is now used by the assessors and Nancy and Carol. So it's fully accessible. It's accessible for people coming in the back door, the front door. So I encourage people to, I guess, visit it. It's really beautiful. It's the nicest one in City Hall.
Is there some kind of signage that lets people know where it is?
No, but all the staff that's the bathroom that staff directs people to that need a restroom, especially now that certainly the downstairs one is not usable and it wouldn't be accessible for people on the second floor anyway, but that's the one that staff direct anybody to that needs it.
Thanks. I totally forgotten about that because I don't tend to go into that part of the building. If I'm going to City Hall, I'll just go into like the clerk's office or something. And but I do remember that one was made accessible in that section of the building. Thank you, Nicholas.
Thank you.
Erica, did you have a question or a comment?
Actually, I do have a comment, especially piggybacking on Bern. Signage is great because for those of us who, walk with a limp, going into the back is extremely hard. So signage would be great for those of us who can't, walk well, knowing that that's available. I didn't even know that was available. But also, accessibility, piggybacking on what Danielle said, accessibility isn't just for those of us who have limited mobility. It's for those of us who might be using, a pram, for those, and need to, have, or using a grocery cart, it's just, ramps are awesome for everybody. But signage is extremely important for everybody. And I know that City Hall is very limited with their signage. I sometimes wonder, when the accessible bell is in use, or if I can even access City Hall after hours when I need to get to places. So, signage is just remarkable, and accessibility is not just for those of us who have limited mobility. It's for everybody. So thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
So do we have a prioritized plan? These are the things that most need to happen to be in compliance?
We have some, there's some accessibility plans that are part of that. For example, the auditorium, Sanders money has some accessibility improvements built into that. In City Hall, I think the bathroom was a big priority. But I would say other than that, we'll certainly do the survey once Jean is fully onboarded onto this, onto this position. But I wouldn't say that one exists now. I know, certainly as part of the odd Sanders money, that has a component as well. There's no big capital plans in City Hall that include accessibility only updates. Now, whenever we do projects, when we did the Barre Up space, we had to make that accessible, right? So that as we modernize spaces, that becomes accessible. So the engineer's office downstairs will be accessible. when that's completed. So no standalone projects, Councilor Stockwell, but certainly the ones that we've done in the building and do get accessibility upgrades. I'd also say, rightly or wrongly, that we try to focus a lot of our investments outside of City Hall. I know people spend a lot of time here, rightfully, to pay taxes and to pay bills and get documents, et cetera, et cetera. But a lot of our investments have been focused on the other facilities of the city, just because they have recreational value or income value and things like that. So that's why I'm excited about the accessibility upgrades at the auditorium as part of the Sanders Grant.
Thank you.
Yep.
Yes.
I'm assuming that, well, I think I have two things. Well, I think that having buildings that are accessible is important. I also think we're bigger than just these buildings that we own, and there's city sidewalks, and there's crosswalk signals, and there's probably all kinds of things that I'm not even considering. And so how, if someone had an issue, they could file a grievance for any of those things, any and all of those things.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
And it would come straight to you.
Yeah, at this point it would, yeah, because right now I'm the contact, yeah. So
Okay.
they would come to me. We do have, in the Public Works Department, now this has been limited in the last 2 summers because we've had obviously flood responses, but typically the Public Works Department has a schedule of, the pads on the sidewalks, right? So improving those and making those, making those nicer and easier to use. So they typically have I forget the number per year that they try to budget out. They haven't kept up because obviously they've been doing a lot of flood work in the middle, but we do plan for some of those on a yearly basis.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then my second question is, I realized that your position as the ADA coordinator is hopefully short-lived.
Yes.
Because my question about this grievance procedure is that in step 3, the appeal is submitted, if someone wants to appeal what the ADA coordinator has resolved or not satisfactorily resolved the issue, then it goes to the city manager, which is also you.
Yes.
So how
Fair
does
question.
that get handled?
So the way we typically deal with that is I would designate Dawn Monahan, our assistant city manager, to be my appeal person. So she would, if we were to get an appeal under this policy, I would hear it. I would sort of do that first step as the policy states. She wouldn't be involved. That way, she would be impartial to it, and that's the way it would function if I'm in that step as well, in that further step as well. So that's how we would implement something like that. We do that from time to time if I'm, I might be conflicted out of something. So for example, my kids participate in Black Bears hockey. So I try to not make decisions that impact Black Bears rentals or facility use that may have implications for the city, right? So I say, Don, you deal with this decision, right? So we would do something similar in this situation where until Jean is the official coordinator, were a grievance to come up, were it to get to that level, Don would come into that step.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Anything else, council? LMK, I don't think you've had a chance to speak to this issue.
I have not, thank you. So many years ago, this conversation is reminding me that I worked as a personal care assistant to a woman with a lot of disabilities who had a lot of mobility issues and many difficulties. And it really opened my eyes to how it is to be in that situation, to how hard every day is, how hard normal things that other people take for granted are. So I guess what I'd like to say is I would want to make a plea for our city to be as forward thinking as possible about this, and not the onus not be on people with disabilities and people with difficulties with the way things are built, to have to be the ones who bring it up all the time. To that end, so that means universal design and moving more in that direction. like as others have so wonderfully said, like we're all temporarily able-bodied. People who are right now are temporarily able-bodied until we're not. And so I'm wondering, with the grievance process, can anybody bring a grievance? Doesn't have to be a person who is personally affected. Is that correct?
Yeah, I don't think there's a limit on that.
Okay. All right. So the reason I asked that question is I would urge my fellow residents to start looking with your eyes and in your experience to see what needs changing and be that person who thinks about that, to take some of the load off of people with disabilities who see it easily without having to think about it because it affects their everyday life. So this is a way to be in solidarity with people and help this process and not just put it on the shoulders of people who struggle every day. Thank you.
Thank you. Erica Rio?
Yeah, I'm also wondering what kind of training the new ADA coordinator will get.
I don't know, Erica. What we'll probably do is reach out to the state agency that administer this and see if there's training opportunities available. I think that there's the federal agency that administer this also has a lot of materials that I've relied on. Certainly when we put these procedures together, when we put the website together. So we would reach out to the agencies at the state and federal level that administer this and use the resources that they make available, which in my experience have been very helpful.
I would also reach out to the Vermont Center for Independent Living, who also do this training. They do a lot of trainings on disability education. They also have coordinators for disability rights as well.
Thank you. Okay, council, we'll move on to item 9 on the agenda. This is upcoming business. I have nothing additional for council at this time, just trying to keep up with the holiday season and the end of the year. Councilor Spaulding?
I wonder if we could entertain the idea of getting a legislative update from our representatives on a monthly basis, because I know they do this in Barrytown. I've gone to present budgets and that kind of thing, and their representatives come in and give them updates. I don't know how often it is, maybe monthly, but might be helpful and a way for us to keep in touch with our representatives, and we could hear what's going on and how that's going to impact us, and we could maybe give feedback as well.
Do you ever, do you get regular updates from like VLCT and?
Yes, no,
Yeah,
but
they do those usually on a weekly basis, so.
But I'm talking about our.
No, I understand that, but yeah, they give, between the several organizations that give a fairly comprehensive, like, everything that's going on. Councilor Stock? Yeah, no, I got it. We'll arrange for that. Councilor Stockwell?
A month or so ago, I asked about, could we find empty business buildings at a different rate than we find residences? Is there something different we could do with that? I know some municipalities do that. So I was just wondering, I realize that the city manager has been very busy and will be very busy, but could we consider that?
Consider?
A different rate for businesses for empty businesses.
Commercial buildings.
Commercial buildings.
For empty businesses. Yeah.
Particularly on Main Street.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I'm going to count this as my flood plan update, which is that I had sent an email out to council earlier, and I want to just name this for the public record and for those listening, I will read out the updates we expect to see in January on the flood resiliency plan on January. Just to be clear to everyone, the city manager and I sat down and worked through the schedule. This is not just me brainstorming. So on January 7, we will hear an outline of the work to be done under the Municipal Energy Resiliency Grant, which will provide updates to the Barre Auditorium, which is in the flood resiliency plan because it is our Regional Emergency Shelter. On January 14, I will be, as a counselor, bringing forward a plan for community building microgrants that I had mentioned at a previous meeting. And then on January 28th, the manager will present an update on where we stand in terms of buyouts for flood-affected properties. So just a quick preview of our January plans. We actually made draft plans through March, keeping in mind that they're draft and keeping in mind, as always, that any counselors, or for that matter, residents who feel very strongly that they would like an update on a portion of the plan in a different timeline than is currently planned, to please reach out.
Thank you. Anything else? Councilor Deering, would you like to start us off with roundtable?
Just really excited for winter sports season. Got to experience some hockey on Saturday. Gonna have a double header tomorrow at the BOR for both the boys and girls, starting at 5:15. And happy holidays, Merry Christmas.
Thank you. Councilor Guston?
Pass.
Councilor Shambell?
I'll pass.
Councilor Wassesek?
Just to Councilor Spalding's earlier point, I still plan on, jumping on these Zooms and having them on in the background so I can stay updated on what's happening in the city and be helpful in any way. And upcoming business, fix the damn boiler. It's hot in here.
Councilor Spalding?
Yeah, so I went to the Queer Craft Fair on Sunday at the Labor Hall, and I actually went as an attendee and bought a few things, and then I actually went back to volunteer to help with parking. And I'm reading an email that I received, so that's why I'm looking at my phone. There were over 1,200 people that attended the fair on Sunday. They had 70 volunteers and 55 vendors, and the average in gross sales for the vendors were $1,500. I don't know what the impact was for downtown businesses, although it is anecdotal that some people were commenting that because it was on a Sunday, not as many businesses were open. So I'm not sure how that will impact when they come back, if they plan next year to do it on a Saturday or Sunday. And I say all this to just say, I'm hopeful that we could at some point try to find a way about how these kinds of events are impacting our downtown businesses. I'm not sure what that looks like. And how much I appreciate that we have all the people who've come into Barre City and can appreciate the Labor Hall, and we can be a great host city. And it was a fabulous event. Friendly people, great food, great vendors. It was just great. So.
Councilor Stockwell?
Just piggybacking on that, the first Queer Craft Fair, I had a friend come who was using a walker at the time, and it was really hard to get her. She wanted to go have lunch in downtown Barre, which I thought was a great thing to go from the craft fair to lunch. It was really hard to get safely over the Granite Street sidewalk because it's not in great shape. So, but on a happier note, I was delighted by the library raffle. I went there, I bid on many things. I think it's still open. I bid for some reason on a 6-foot inflatable Grinch. I'm not sure why I did that, but there are many things that anybody could use. So I highly recommend people do that. And I'll pass.
Thank you very much. Council, we've come to item 11 on the agenda. This is an executive session. It will involve real estate. I'll need a motion for findings.
So moved.
Thank
Second.
you. Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of the motion as presented, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, I'll need a motion to go into executive session. Joining us will be some representatives from BADC.
So moved.
And we'll list them on the. Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of the motion as presented, please signify by saying aye.
We have
Aye.
David stick around.
Oh, and I don't know, David. I apologize.
Oh, 2 minutes, that's so I could use the restroom.
Council, a motion to exit executive session would be in order.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of the motion as presented, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed? Okay, Council, where we are at, these gentlemen from BADC have had conversations with the council a couple of times in executive session. They have entered into an option agreement to purchase a building located at, what is the physical address? 143 North Main Street, which we all know is the Newberry's building. They have asked the council to pledge the sum of $400,000 towards the option price. I think several of the councilors have indicated a willingness to do that. We can bring that to a vote. However, I want it understood that the city will have to develop I guess we'll call it a sponsorship agreement, for lack of a better word, that will define certain things in terms of what your roles are going to be, what the city's roles are going to be, and eventually where the ownership of the property will vest.
How it ends up.
So, yeah. Council, does anyone care to make that motion?
So moved.
I got your motion.
Seconded.
It's made by Councilor Wozniak, seconded by Councilor Guston. Any discussion or concerns, council? Anyone? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion as presented, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed? The ayes have it, motion carries.
Thank you very, very much. We really, really appreciate it, and now
Well,
we gotta get.
gentlemen, you've got your work cut out for you.
Thank you very much.
It's a great day for Barry.
Question though, from here.
Yes.
Will this have to come back to the council on January 7th?
This was not a warned item.
Right, okay.
I am inclined to ask Councilor Wozniak to withdraw his resignation from the council. And I will be calling.
Conspiracy.
Well, I mean, I just think it's more appropriate to give Councilor Wozniak the opportunity to ratify the vote. So what I will do is call an emergency special meeting of the council. That'll occur within the next 2 to 3 days so that we can ratify, so that we can publish this and we can ratify this vote. So gentlemen, I would ask all of you to prepare to come back for a public session and another presentation.
January 7th.
Okay, thank you. Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second. Sure.
Well, it's 2 minutes of 9. Can you still get tacos?
No, it's too late.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I feel really badly.
There are other tacos. This is one of the beauties of life. Just as a note, if we do end up special meeting, if it can be earlier next week, that will.
If we can go into next week, yes, that we certainly can do that.
Okay,
Is that all right with you, Counselor? I'm just
So
asking.
this resolution means nothing then?
It's tomorrow is Teddy Wozniak Day.
We
is what
will
that
pass
resolution-
another
After tonight,
resolution.
tomorrow better be Teddy Appreciation Day. All right, there's a motion and a second for adjournment.
All right, all those in favor of the motion as
Thank you,
presented?
Barry. Thank you.
Those opposed?
Great night for Barry.
Thank you.
Great night.